I'm doing a master study. This time I'm doing it in my sketchbook. Well, again, I've done it before that way. The reason is because I don't like to sell them. I consider them more just an investment in myself by exploring the techniques. But this right here is the palette that I'm going to use. And the one that I'm going to do, I've been researching about Lucian Freud, and he is a very prominent portrait artist, very important to art history. And so I chose one that I could redo. He used a very limited palette. He tended to use yellow ochre, red ochre, and then just a black and white. I don't have a red ochre. So what I've put down here is I've put, and these are up here too, but these are down here for me to mix. This is a titanium white, yellow ochre, and go through these. Titanium white, I'm using Winsor & Newton. The yellow and ochre, I'm using Williamsburg. Cadmium yellow, I'm using Gamblin 1980. The burnt sienna, I'm using Holbein. Oops, I got them out of order up here. For the red, I'm using a vermilion hue from Holbein. And then on the black, I'm using an ivory black, also from Holbein. So what we can do though here is, you'll notice that there's no blue, but what we use for blue will be this black. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up some shades I can use ahead of time. If you see that by itself, it doesn't look too exciting. But if you put it next to an orangey, let me add a little white to that too. Come on, baby. This is our burnt sienna. It brings out the blue tones of the gray. And then for a red, a warm red, we're using this. And again, next to that gray, I'm probably going to have to mix up a lot more colors. If we need a green, we'll take our yellow ochre and just a smidge of that white, or I'm sorry, the black. And you see how it's turning a green. It's a very muted palette, except for the warm reds that you'll get from the vermilion. Add a little white to that so you can see how green that is. Kind of looks like an army green. And then if you want a purple, you can take this vermilion, and here you see it where I added just white. Do some more of that. But if you do that and then add just a little bit of black, it turns into a purple. I love this palette. I love these color choices. In fact, I'm due to do another layer on a painting I'm working on that's important to me. And I'm thinking of doing the next layer with these colors so that I just like them. So these are the colors that we're using. We've got a red, We've got a yellow, we've got a blue, we've got a purple, we've got a green, and we've got an orange. And I realize that orange probably looks pretty weak. But if you need this brighter too, you can always add just a little bit of, if you need it warmer. And I don't know if you can see. But it gives you a little bit warmer orange there. Okay. My paintbrushes I've got, Lucian used bristle brushes, hog bristle brushes. What I have, they're probably the closest. I don't have actual hog brushes. I do have some ivories. I know they aren't like the, other than being white, that's about it. And they're a little stiffer. And these are rosemary brushes. Is what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of draw out the shapes here that he has for this face. And usually I will use a dark brown for that. And this little pot here has poppy seed oil in it. So I took that burnt sienna and just added some black to it. And it just makes a dark brown. So it starts out with her head up here. And this won't be an exact replica, obviously. But the main point for me is to learn how he used his colors and some of his brush strokes. Another thing, he often did things in layers. So the paint would have this texture to it. Technically, they say you are supposed to mix your paints with your palette knife. But it just does not come natural to me. I'm always finding myself mixing with my brush. I think it's being impatient is a big part of it. I want it down, and I want it down now. I'm putting down kind of a grayish brown shadow here. Lucian was, from what I understand anyway, not the greatest role model of a human being to follow. He did create some amazing paintings. And here I'm just getting the shape of the hair, obviously, and getting it down. I love using oils. There's just something about it that just, you know, and if you, once you start using them, you find out that they're not any more difficult than acrylics. It's a different medium, just like using oil pastels or anything else. Got her hair too wide on these, so I'm going to cut back into that. That poppy seed oil, it will help the flow of the paint, but it also will make it somewhat translucent. So you have to kind of be careful with it. And there's a little on her eye there. Now that looks attractive, doesn't it? She's got kind of a greenish over here. I love the textures that he comes up with in his work. And my brush strokes will not exactly mimic his, because for one, I'm painting on a smooth surface. What I'm getting right here is really interesting to me, these colors. He has much more of a muted color. I'm trying to concern myself more with the values right now. So we can get the, if you look at photos of his studio, of Freud's, they were very, he would paint brush strokes on the wall. And this is me just kind of getting down a layer of paint. I'm not getting the whites like I should. There we go. They're more of a gray. One thing I'm not going to be worried about is getting things really smooth. I want the messiness to show up, the looseness. Poppy seed oil will lengthen the time that paint stays wet, but I use so little of it combined with the paint that it doesn't make a huge difference in the time. It does make a difference in the how fluid my brush strokes are. I have one that I'm waiting for somebody for it to dry so I can ship it to somebody, and I went to ship it and I discovered it's still tacky, and it's been a month. So I really find these colors just, at this page and in this also I gessoed, so this is not on plain paper. I need to get that background in there, but I want to get my features placed where I need them. I'm going to change paintbrushes. I love these Rosemary and Co brushes. They're amazing to use, and you can tell the difference in how much I've used those. The one on the left is newer, and this one's also a filbert, I believe. There we go. Because what I want to do is get some of the details in these features and get them placed, because I don't even have them placed yet. And generally I would consider this paintbrush far too small to be using at this point, but I think it's going to help me. Can't decide if some of those grays I'm seeing on her face are more purple. Like she's got a shadow in here, and this will look worse before it looks better. And I don't know if you saw how thick that paint just went on, but it may take a while for this one to dry. I would think that he would not use a straight black, that he would add a smidge of something with it. So I just added just a little purple because of her having such dark hair. It has kind of a, if you look really close at the background, it looks like it's just a gray. There's some areas of like peachy sort of. I've got that the wrong value. I think that possibly there could have been a cloth behind her. Once I get this down, it tends to allow me to go ahead and get another layer on top of it. even if I have to use the fat over lean method. And if somebody's not familiar with that, it's when you put more oil onto the canvas than what is underneath. I tend to speak very softly too when I'm working, and I find that an issue when I'm editing. So know that if that's an issue for you, it's also an issue for me. I don't have many of the features, the details down. I tend to speak very monotone too. We've been going a half an hour, which isn't bad, I don't think. I do not think so at all. I think I'm closer to the shape of her face. I'm yet noticing more of the yellows in certain places. And there's a little bit of red underneath here too. And this little space right in here is very brown. I know after I was looking through his books or books on him, and I watched a few videos, it was as if everybody had this look to them. I could definitely see what he was doing. Now, if I can get it down on canvas, or in this case paper, that remains to be seen. This is, if you've ever done a Sargent study, this is definitely very different. Feels very different. It just has a whole different vibe to it. I'm just going to keep working on this. I saw photos of his studio. I was very surprised. I did not think it would be as rough, I guess is the right word, as rough as what they were. There was if you haven't seen any, I would strongly suggest, there's a little bit of, I would suggest going and looking some up. There's a little bit of a yellow underneath her eye. This area of her face has a gray tone. But this is the area that I wondered though, if it wasn't a purplish more than a gray. Let me try and get some of the nose down or eyes or something so that you can see more of what I'm seeing in my mind's eye. Now that looks like that was one brush stroke. Like you just went in there and went, boop. I've long been an admirer of his work, and I happened into a used bookstore and found a book on his work at a fraction of what it would have cost me. And say Amazon, and to say that I was a happy camper, would have been an understatement. I'm looking through the lens of the camera every once in a while too, because it looks different with my eyes than how it looks on the camera. I see I'm making the face too wide, so I'm just gonna, this mark is purely for me. It will not stay this way. One would think with all these loose marks that he did these quickly and was just churning these puppies out, but From what I understand, he would often rework and rework, and I can see I'm getting the face too, I got the face too wide, and I think that's the old, every portrait is a self-portrait. And I'm not slamming myself or anything like that. I just seen that go down. Oh, yeah, it goes down there. And like I said, I'm not going for an exact replica. I'm going for the essence of what he's got here. I may have to fast forward through some of this just for time allotment. I'm in awe of his just subtle use of color and all in here. I guess he was not the best father or husband. I can't remember how many children they said he had, the ones that he claimed. Like 14. And then rumors have to be 20 more. This in here all has like a lot of texture, and there's undertones. And this is just using the burnt sienna for the reddish tones on the cheeks. I just want to note too, I have a puppy underneath the table, my dog, and his little head is sitting on my feet right now because he is awe-worthy. To me, it looks like this part, I've got it, the way I've got it, it's like almost a separate part of her face. So I'm going to try and fix this shape in here. I can definitely see like the texture that was on there on the canvas. And in fact, I went earlier to gesso some to prime some canvases for later, and I intentionally painted over one with gesso so that it had a very, very obvious texture to it. See, I can see now that that part in there is light too, and I didn't do that. I think that's my main problem with that area. This is, yeah, it's more like that. I have to say I'm really enjoying just putting this paint down and just leaving these shapes, and it's very different than how I have been painting. It's very much closer to how I want to be painting, so that's nice. Because sometimes you just paint, you paint how you paint. I'm looking at the color right next to her nostril over here and how it shapes things. There's a slight yellow. I have never seen a Lucian Freud in person. I would love to. I need to check and see if there's one nearby anywhere. I think it would be well worth a trip. And that has more of a yellow ochre. I'm gonna have to go over some of these areas. Yesterday I did the Lucian Freud study, and I'm pretty sure it's still wet. And I didn't get it as far as I would like. He tended to work in layers, so there's a really nice texture on his pieces. And since I just did it all prima in one day, and the video is already, at this point before I edit it, it's almost 2 hours. I could go ahead and keep going, but I think I'm going to stop where it's at, because my main focus was learning to do his skin tones with the colors that he uses, and I think I did that. So I'm going to leave that where it is. The quality of it is probably not as high as I would like it to be, as far as something to show people. But part of this is me showing the good and the bad. And I learned what I wanted to learn from this experience. So I'm going to let it go. Don't forget to, if you haven't already, I would appreciate a subscribe and a thumbs up. And if you hit the little bell, it will notify you when a new video comes up. I appreciate you more than I can say, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye. Take care.